right, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in the Chavas sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it is in His name, which is His authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, protect, and protect today's message. Aman, Shabbat Shalom, Barashayat, Like, Chilet, so it's Chris, Mashalom, Tada, Achi, Adatchet, Atisadait, Ban, At, Chalasa'al, Tada. Thank you so much for being on. I am Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being the voice of voices and speaking the unspoken. Prayerfully, everybody can hear me all right, see me all right. Looks like our signal should be fine. Praise God. We're thankful and grateful for another opportunity to come before you one more again. And those that are in Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston area, not quite 100% there. I tried my best. Started falling asleep behind the wheel. I had to make sure that I pulled over, so we're about an hour outside. But hopefully we shall be parked and rested and everything in there after the live session. So prayerfully all is well with everyone. Prayerfully everybody's doing all right, being safe out here today. We're going to go ahead and jump right into the Word. Since on Shabbat, or on Saturdays, for those who keeps Friday and Saturday is Shabbat, or all of Saturday is Shabbat, we do have a shorter day as far as the live sessions, because we get ready to go into the podcast at the top of the hour. So prayerfully, all is well with everyone. Prayerfully, everybody's doing all right. We're thankful and grateful to be before you guys one more again. Make sure that we're on track with the Word, continuing our Barashayat series. We will, so for the rest of the day, and we give our honor once again to the Most High. We give our praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Amma, who lives like to say we'll be honored. At 10 a.m. New York time, we'll have our Shabbat service on the podcast. At 11 a.m. New York time, we'll have our Shabbat school for the babies. At 7 p.m. London time, we'll have our service for those in England and other places that are close enough to be with that. And at 7 p.m. New York time, we will have our men's meeting. Today it is the first Saturday of the month. We'll be right back in our book, The 5 Love Languages with Dr. Gary Chapman. So that's the schedule that we have today. If you'd like to be part of those things, we'd love to have you. And also, don't forget that as far as the Hebrew calendar, Shabbat will actually start this evening. So you got to have a double Shabbat if you treat Friday and Saturday as Shabbat, but then you have Saturday and Sunday as the Hebrew calendar Shabbat right after that. And a reminder that not today, but next Saturday will be our makeup Passover. All right, not this Saturday, but next Saturday will be our makeup Passover. So prayerfully everybody can join us for all of those things. But we're thankful and grateful to have you guys on. Let's go ahead and get right into this Word. How you doing, Sister Beck? How you doing, Sean? Mary, Ryder, Fard Collins, Mr. I Don't See Nobody, I guess that's how you pronounce it. Andrew Crawford, Tyrone, is it Pirate Man's KK, Sister Kimberly. I did get your message, Sister Kimberly. We'll see if we can do something or find a way, if possible. Not sure exactly how much time we have here today and possibly tomorrow, but we'll try to see if we can say hi if possible. How you doing, Marianne? How you doing, Blue? Blues 584. How you doing, Chris Mitchell? How you doing, Linda Flowers? How you doing, Nate? Is it Nate? Sister Deborah, Emotion, Howard, Old Rock, Mrs. Sunshine, Mustafa, I believe, Mustafa, is it even Scalito? Not even sure. I'm in the ballpark on that. How you doing, Eddie Decent, Bryn, Almond Joy, Tron Man, everybody. If I miss you, charge to my head, not to my heart. How you doing, Sister Sylvia? How you doing, Deborah Phillips? Let's see. Everybody coming on all the platforms. Appreciate you. If you don't mind liking and sharing, and if you're on YouTube, even hitting the subscribing if you haven't already, hit the notification tab so that you'll know when we're on. Thank you in advance for any likes, shares, any views. It all helps us in the kingdom, even those who go as far as giving any kind of donation, whether it's time, talent, effort, energy, and yes, even resources we are thankful and grateful for those as well. All right? We don't actually make money from social media, although we use it. So those who help us to make sure that we're doing what we do around the world, yeah, thank you so much. How you doing, Pinky? How you doing, T-Wood? All right, Shabbat Shalom once again to everybody. Peace be upon thee. Can everybody hear me all right? I'm trying to project. I'm outside. It's going to be a little noisy as far as vehicles where I am, but prayerfully everybody should be able to hear me. Can you hear me and see me all right? Yes, no, maybe so. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, all that great stuff. Please let me know if you can. Thank you for the love. How you doing, T-Wood? Can everybody hear me, see me? Yes, no, maybe so. We're going to go ahead and get ready to do our Bible quiz and jump in. How you doing, daughter of the King? All right, you can. Thank you. On TikTok, YouTube, anybody hear me, see me? Yes, no, maybe so. Prayerfully so. We're going to go ahead and get started. Looks like you guys can. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Como está mi hermana Sherry? Gracias. See? All right. Let's go ahead and get started. Con. All right. You can just repeat after me for the Bible pledge. It goes like this. How you doing, Big Roy? Just repeat after me. This is my Bible. This is my sword. And this will I trust. For Yahshua is Lord. No sword of God shall ever be heard. For this is my Bible. And this is Yah's word. His name and authority. Amen. How you doing, Maurice? All right, so we're continuing this Barashayat series. We've been doing Barashayat series since February 7th. Barashayat basically breaks down to in beginning as far as a basic or working definition. In beginning, or in your Bible, it will come off as in the beginning. This is Paleo Hebrew, by the way, Barashayat, modern Hebrew, Barashayat, right, but meaning in beginning. It's the first scroll, not called Genesis, but called Barashayat, Genesis, in the Greek and Latin sense. It's talking about genealogy, the genesis, the generations, talking about a family. And as we talk about with the word quite often here, the word is not written to everybody, right? This is why a lot of persons don't care for law, culture, etc. How you doing, talk about? They don't care about language, right? How you doing, love? How you doing? This big putt, right? A lot of persons going to read the word and try their best to separate culture from it. We talked a lot about yesterday with marriage in Genesis 23 because Abraham lost his wife. Today we're going to go into Genesis 24 and talk about the fact that Abraham is gaining a wife to the family, not his wife, but Isaac will now have a wife, right? And this is about how we set things correct in the beginning, culturally speaking. Genesis is telling us where we're headed, who the persons are, who's connected to who. You know, on Patreon we'll probably talk a little bit about this, but even if you talk about how one of the reasons the flood is even necessary when you break things down is we're even talking about the bloodline of so-called Nephilim and giants and other things that must be broken, right, to make sure that the bloodline leading up to Yahshua is clean. A lot of different things that are happening, but this is not written to everybody and for everybody. This is for a particular family, a family who holds these beliefs, a community who holds these beliefs. Even marriage being an institution, when we looked up the word institution, and I had somebody else look it up, 2 other persons looked it up besides myself. Besides other persons who looked up definitions as well, I asked for 2 persons to look up the legal definitions or the lawful definitions for institution and institutionalized, right? And an institution has to be within a community or a culture or a society, right? Or even a nation. It has to be within a society based off of law, and those laws set what these institutions are. They even protect what they are, because if you recall, laws do not give rights, but laws protect rights. Correct? So laws do not give rights, but laws protect rights. So persons who don't want to follow laws don't worry about institutions. The problem with that is, though, is that how do you have the institution of marriage when you don't have laws that protect it? We spoke on this yesterday, we spoke on this before, but once again, just real quick, somebody who says that they are ordained cannot be an ordained minister or reverend or priest or elder without the permission of the state. The law protects the rights of the citizen, or in our case, the law protects the right of the sovereign. Right? The law protects the right of those. So if somebody wants to involve themselves in the so-called institution, how you doing, Sister Michelle? How you doing, Lulu? How you doing, Sister Mike? If somebody wants to involve themselves in the law or the institution, right, of marriage, what do you have to do? You have to be ordained lawfully by the society, by the community, by the nation, right, by the culture, by the state. If the state does not ordain you as somebody worthy of making sure that you are allowed to proclaim that somebody can be considered to be covered within the institution called marriage, then guess what? Then you are not allowed to marry somebody. If you are not lawfully covered by a state or lawfully covered by an organization or a nation, whether publicly or privately, your institution called marriage is basically not lawful or legal. How you doing, Brother Darius? How you doing, KC? Right? How you doing, Shabbat Shalom? Everybody coming in, how you doing, Elder Selected Nice? So the law is important for any institution. An institution cannot exist without laws that protect it from the society that allows the institution to be in existence. Then we looked up the legal definition for institutionalized. And to be institutionalized, one must be put in an institution and live within the institution. So if one's put in the institution of prison, right, you get institutionalized as far as prison. You'll see somebody acts different, lives different, and works different, especially within the confines of the prison. And even when they get out, you can see still that there's some things that they are still have that are institutionalized, right? If somebody is put in school, school is an institution. So somebody who goes to a school follows certain things, but that school can only do what they're doing privately or publicly as long as the law allows for it, right? But they are allowed to be institutionalized in the institution they're in. Well, if you're in the institution of marriage, you see that? Lawfully speaking. If you're in the institution called marriage, then you have to be institutionalized. But the only way your marriage will work, it works within what is governed or allowed within the constitution of the nation or the corporation or the country, etc., that you exist in. And so if you believe in the institution of marriage but do not believe in the law, then what you're saying is that you do not believe that what Yah has for you in marriage is something that you should go ahead and follow. You want to make that as plain as the nose on your face. How you doing, Tim, man? How you doing, Merle's World? How you doing? Hopefully I'm saying that right. Is it Lear or Lear? Lear does? I'm not sure if that's Lear does. But thanks for being on, right? Lear does phenomenal, something along those lines, right? But this is important that you catch this, right? What we're going to talk about today in Genesis 24, Genesis 23, and by the way, tomorrow will be a special Mother's Day message, so we hope that you guys come and listen and invite mothers to be mothers, those who are mothers, even if they don't have physical children, to take care of their community, for the Bible honors them and stuff as well, and so do we, right? We're going to have a special message for our mothers. We kind of have a special message for our sisters today on the podcast, too. So prayerfully, you'll be able to come by and swing by and be a part of that. But we have to recognize that if one is talking about an institution, you can't speak on an institution and not talk about being institutionalized, and you can't be institutionalized within the institution if the institution is unlawful, right? If the institution is unlawful, you have a lawful right to be able to come out and say, hey, this is not how this institution works. This is not how this institution moves. This is not how we're supposed to operate, because the law of the state or the law of the nation or the law of what governs the institution, right? The laws don't give rights, laws protect rights. So these laws to protect the rights of the institution, we have to be honest about that and say something's off. And how you doing, Sister Jennifer? Thank you all for the love. How you doing, Brother Richard? Everybody coming in. So we have to make sure, right, that we are locked into the law of the state. Our state is Ladach Shamayam, or Ladach At Shamayam, the kingdom of heaven. Our nation is governed by Ladach At Shamayam, the kingdom of heaven. And so the institution of marriage, right, if you're inside of it, you are supposed to be institutionalized. Now, what we teach as well is, very quickly before we get into Genesis 24, if you want to turn there, Barashayat Kaf Dalet, or Genesis chapter 24. If you want to turn there, so make sure that you're seeing what we're seeing. We're not going to go over everything word for word, but you will see what we're talking about there. We suggest that you go there so you can always research what we're saying. Don't just believe it because I'm saying it or because you think it sounds nice or whatever. Believe it because it's true. Right, but when we look up Barashayat, how you doing, Rodney? When we look up Barashayat in the beginning, we look here, you're seeing a culture, right? You're seeing a culture, and you're seeing that in our culture, we don't do this thing where somebody becomes a husband or becomes a wife once they are married. And really officially, by the way, if you didn't know this, technically you're not officially married until one lays down, right? Or if you want to go there, sex is marriage, marriage is sex. Once two become one, that's when you're married, right? You have to consummate the marriage. If you didn't know that, you can check out the law. If you are somebody who gets in a marriage and you guys stay together for a while and you guys have not laid down and the two have not become one, you can go back in front of the judge and the judge will annul the marriage. He'll say it doesn't count. Why? Because if two don't become one, then it doesn't count. See, but then you have to see how, this is why you got to see who you're governed by. Because the same system will say you can lay down with anybody, right, and not be considered to be married. However, if you guys are laying down with each other, whether you have children or not, and you live together in many states, right, for a certain amount of years, usually 7, then all of a sudden, once you're together, they just say, hey, you're married officially. This is truth. This is truth. This is law, right? We're told to stay away from law, so we don't look at things lawfully. But this is the truth, and we must honor the truth, and we must be real, right? We don't want to give half truths and tell whole lies. We want to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help us, right? Common law marriage, right? And common law is even a part of law, right? So that's one of the ways that, one of the brackets, one of the umbrellas, if you look at as far as how law works. So when you're talking about law, you have to make sure that you establish things concerning the law, right? And so your marriage is lawfully protected by the culture, by the nation that you are under, right? And so even whether it's private, because you can be privately married. In public marriage means you have to go through the state that belongs to the United States Corporation or belongs to your country or whatever is your so-called country. But you don't have to identify your marriage under that. There can be something called private marriage, right? There's public law, there's private law. Your marriage doesn't have to be under the government or the beast. It can be under something else that you want it to be under. And we would suggest that you do that, if not on paper, at least in body, mind, and soul. There's certain things that you shouldn't look at the way the world does. How you doing, Sister Carla? How you doing, Sister Joy? Right? Is it Marquine? I hope I'm saying that right. Shalom. Peace. How you doing, Sister Nikia? So, in Genesis 24, we get to this place to where, on YouTube, I think we're calling it Here Comes the Bride. But really, we see how important marriage is to Abraham. Now, if you recall, we talked about how important Abraham and Sarah's marriage was, and how Abraham has just lost Sarah, and therefore he's lost a piece of himself. And your word, if you want to see where Rebecca comes from, she's even talked about as far as where she comes from and how she's related, and how her people are related to Abraham. At the end of Genesis 23. Genesis 22 or Genesis 23? I believe at the end of Genesis 23, right? But we have this thing where we see Abraham's lost Sarah, he's going through a lot, and we see the importance of the importance of a wife to her husband, right? We see the importance, the necessity of not a woman. There are many women, and we respect our women, by the way. There are many women, right? Not a girl. There are many girls, 40, 50-year-old girls, 10-year-old girls, but not a girl, not a girlfriend, but a wife. And not just any wife, but a wife, right? Aisha Radach, right? Aisha Radach, a kingdom wife, a kingdomly wife, if you will. A wife, right, who is someone who is governed by the Most High, right? And makes her mistakes, as we all do, but is a wife, and she helps you complete. And we're going to have a special Mother's Day message tomorrow, so this is kind of leading up to it. And even you guys who are going to be on the podcast today, you'll see that all these things are kind of, the Holy Spirit, she really put this stuff together. But I want you to see the importance of a wife, the importance of husband and wife. It's extremely important, extremely valuable. And Abraham has lost his wife. And so this happens in Genesis 23. And Barashayat Dalit, or Genesis 24, we now get to a place to where Abraham is getting older. He's lost his wife. Isaac has lost his mother. And Isaac basically lives in a whole other place within the camp or within the huge land that Abraham has. And Abraham talks to his servant. And he says, I'm getting older. I'm paraphrasing. Right? Abraham says, I'm getting older. And before I close my eyes, before I leave this earth, I need to make sure that my son has a wife. And he entrusts basically his best friend. He entrusts his number one right-hand man. And he says, hey, I need you to go back to my people. Go back to the people I was raised by. I need you to go back to the people who knew what a wife was when I got married. Right? And this shows the importance, by the way, fathers and mothers, but can I speak to the fathers real quick? Right? He says, I need you to go back to the way, I need you to go back to where I was raised, to where my family is, and find a wife there. Because I'm in the land of Canaan, right? This is where he lives, right? Israel will come back to our father's land, the father Abraham's land. And he says, I need you to go back to where my people are from, and where our standards are set, and where we know what a wife is and what's required of a wife. Because if I come to the land of Canaan, right? I know this is being inferred, if you will. This is not written out. But hey, I'm not looking for a Canaanite wife. I'm not looking for somebody who's an offshoot, right, of things. I want a Shemitic wife. I want a Noah wife. I want an Enoch wife, right? I want a Seth wife. I want somebody connected to the bloodline. I want somebody who is trained in the manner that we're trained. And you being my friend, also my servant, right? You being my friend for all these years and seeing us grow, even getting circumcised, which means that you're willing to follow the law, right? You didn't have to, you could have left, but you decided to stay. You grew with us. You would have had children with us. You're basically my family. You know how things work, right? You know how this works concerning the law. You hear what I'm saying? And so he says, I don't want you to find a wife. And we've gone over this already, so I'm going to go over this a little differently. We've actually recently gone over Genesis 24, but we're going to go over it again today within the confines of this Barashayat series and get something a little different today. For he says, I could have, like Abraham could have his pick of the lot. Abraham, if you haven't noticed, if you haven't been part of the series, if you haven't been really paying attention to this part, Abraham has grown to the point to where he's a nation within himself. Matter of fact, in Genesis 23, we didn't really go over this yesterday. We talked a tiny bit about this, but Abraham goes and he asks permission and basically says, hey, can I buy some land so I can not only bury my wife, but bury my family and bury them in places to where I don't have to see them all the time. And they said, amongst us, you're a prince, you're royalty. So Abraham has a whole lot of land, a whole lot of sheep, a whole lot of oxen, a whole bunch of servants. He has a whole bunch of favor. Persons know that Yah's with him, right? He's grown immensely. He was growing before Isaac was born. They still didn't realize that Yah was growing him to be ready for what the promise that was going to come out of Isaac, to where his children would be like the stars of the sky, where his children would be like the dust of the earth. So Abraham is huge. He's a nation, Abraham and Sarah. Now Sarah has been lost. Abraham's there. Abraham's getting older. And Abraham says, this is going to be Isaac's. And one of the things I need Isaac to have is a wife. And he talks to his right-hand man and he says, you know where I'm from. You know how our culture works. He says, go and find a wife for my son, right? He who finds a wife finds a tabah thing, correct? If you don't know what tabah means, basically it's the way that we would say good. Good, it actually means something different. God and good are the same word. They basically mean something different than many persons think. So we don't use those terms here. Just to let you know if you're trying to figure out what I'm talking about or why I'm not saying that, how you doing unwavering faith. And thank you for the love again. So here we go. So he says, I'm going to send you to find the wife. The wife is of our community. She's of our culture. And one of the things that we don't do very well is go to look for spouses or relationships or really sometimes much of anything that is something that's within our community, because we look at the culture being somebody else, the community being somebody else, or what our community does is we feel we're supposed to look outside of it, to look up to somebody else so that we can say they're the standard, right? Shabbat Shalom, how you doing tonight? Shabbat Shalom to everybody coming on live today, whether you're joining us live or joining us later on. We're thankful for you, right? For example, our sisters, right? You guys know about the story of Sarah Bartman, right? Correct? You know of Sarah Bartman? If you're not sure about Sarah Bartman, just to let you know, Sarah Bartman is a sister hundreds of years ago, was a slave, and when you look her up, she's somebody who I guess today we would say it if we just be adult about it. She was considered to be thick. Okay, she was a brick house. She was mighty, and letting it all hang out. And white men, this is just a historical context. Somebody gonna get upset. I'm just telling you history, right? But long story short, Sarah Bartman, as many women are, by the way, she was one of those women where you saw the whole thing, like you saw that thing that I forget what designer got in trouble, but they made those shirts and they had the black woman's face on there, and she had the mask, and if you recall, there's like two lines that came down, and then you had like a metal thing that covered her face, right? So you could see her eyes, but you couldn't see really her nose, and you definitely couldn't see her mouth. That was a real thing that happened. But persons like Sarah Bartman, there were others as well, but Sarah Bartman's one of the more famous cases. But they basically had this love-hate relationship with our women, and their women, the women of the slave masters, definitely had a hate relationship with our sisters, where basically our sisters were supposed, put it like this, Thomas Jefferson said that black women smelled, right? He said that they were lazy, he said they were ugly, he said that they were hairy, right? He said they were unattractive, he said that they were beasts, they were animals. But Thomas Jefferson had several children by many different slave women, right? Forcibly, right? How you doing, Sister Iska? Now, why is that important that we know what's going on within context, right? Well, within context, what happens is that there are a lot of slave masters like Thomas Jefferson who were having babies that were even making their babies their own slaves many a time. So they wouldn't even treat them any differently. And they looked at them as animals or whatever. And wives would get jealous and stuff like that too. So it was supposed to be something where you look down on the black woman, right? She wasn't even a woman. She would have been a black N-word female. That's what they would have called her, right? But that being said, we'll be nice today, right? They would have said this black woman is supposed to be trash, but at the same time they were so attracted to her that they were having more relations with her and more children with her than they would with their own women. So much so that there are many different lawful documents that we can look at that set legal precedents where we can see that there are children of the slave masters that were black that would actually win cases to win over land before the children of the white women, because some of the slave masters would have children with the black women before they would have babies with a wife later on, right? So you would have some children that would actually win cases. It didn't last that long, but they would win cases to be able to get land and say that I actually deserve the plantation more so than somebody else does, right? How you doing, Big Brother Thomas? So in these things that are happening, there was a lot of stuff like that. So Sarah Bartman and other sisters got a lot of sting in the lash. This was in South America, this was in England, this was in the United States of America. There were zoos where they did this as well, right? Human zoos with so-called African Americans or Negroes or black folk or Moors, etc., right? Israelites, black Hebrew Israelites, etc. They had all of us in these places, and they had our women in these places, and they would put them on display, right? And so what they would do when they were around the plantations, before they even got to the display, they would put the sister in a case, right? So they would put her in chains, they would put her in stuff, so she would walk around, and a lot of times would even walk around naked, except for her face would be covered. Or sometimes her whole body would be covered, depending, but this was a way of shaming her, right? While at the same time being able to get off on her. It was a really weird cognitive dissonance thing, right? This was a way of the so-called white women back then, right? Of that ilk. Not all white women, but we have to admit this was something mostly done by white women, right? So white women and white men at the time, and so they would put sisters like Sarah Bartman, who were supposed to be fat because they didn't look like the standard, which was supposedly the white woman, right? But at the same time, they were attracted to her. But she would be put in lockdown. She would be locked up. She would be given, very demeaning tasks and things of that nature. A lot of times, they would be put in breeding camps for other male slaves, but men were attracted to her. Now, persons like Sarah Bartman would even be flown to different places, would be shipped to different places and be put in even museums while they were alive. Some of them were actually stuffed after death, by the way, too. But while they were alive, they would put them in cases, and they would look at these women, and some men would even come by and would, forgive my brashness, just telling the truth, but some men would even come up to the glass that they would be inside of, right, and would come up to the glass. They would even make all types of weird taunting, including acting like they would masturbate. Some men would, supposedly, allegedly, would even pull their stuff out and would do so right in front of the women. They lived like that for most of their lives, and they were put on display to make fun of the black woman, while at the same time, when you see the big Cinderella type dresses and all that, I forget what you call it, sisters, forgive me. When you see the corset and it's something supposed to pop the breast out here and have them be skinny, and then have the thing to where all of a sudden it looks like they have them behind and the back, these two snaps, and then they have that big kind of reverse wine glass thing going at the bottom. That was to try and mimic the Sarah Bartmans and others of our ilk, of our culture, of our community, and their beauty. So while putting them on display and saying how terrible they were, others were trying to copy and do everything they could to try and look like them, right? And so I say all that to say, if we're talking about a standard, you have to realize that somebody has always tried to make you less of a standard. But Abraham says, I'm not looking at the Canaanite standard. I'm looking at Israel's standard. I'm not looking at the thing where everybody's low-key trying to be us anyways, but then they want us to look at somebody who's not us. No, I want you to go back and find somebody who's of our standard, who's of our culture, who's of our community, who's of our belief system, who shares our language, who shares our values, right? See, and so we were taught to hide and be upset by the way that we look, while everybody else is actually attracted to it. And once you stop looking like that, somebody else tries to look like you. Now, they still try to keep certain features because they can't go full black, because everybody want to be you, but they can't, but they don't want to live you because they've made you a joke. They're at ease with your scoring, according to Psalm 123, verse 4. Shabbat Shalom. How's everybody doing? How you doing, Money Green? How you doing, Just Josh? How you doing, Sarah Fox? How you doing, Jay? That's right. So our sisters are, were, and will be the standard. And not just in body, but now culture. How you doing, Opulent? Right? How you doing, Yas Child? How you doing, Alvin? All times, everybody coming in. Fernando, Mundane, everybody. Thank you for being on. Appreciate you all. So, and thank you all for the love. How you doing? Try, kind, wellness. So this is something where Abraham says, I know that we're the standard. And so he says to his servant, I need you to find a wife. Not a wife by Canaanite standard or somebody else's standard. Yes, we live here, but we might be in Canaan, but we're not of it. And if you recall, Canaan shall belong to us anyways. This is what Abraham's mindset is. Because why? Because Yah said everything that you see is yours. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Right? Since the sound is being muted? Okay. I don't know. Is the sound being muted now? Is the sound being muted now? Can you guys hear me on YouTube? Can you hear me on TikTok? Yes, no, maybe so. You cannot hear? You can't? Okay. Can you hear me? Yes, I'm sorry. That's a better way to ask it. How you doing, Minister Tracy? You can't hear? How you doing? MFY, my father. Con? All right. Is it just you on YouTube? Okay. How you doing, Sister Angela? Praise y'all for you. You can hear? Okay. All right. So Our community is the standard. That's Barashayat in beginning. How you doing, Brother Dwayne? Praise God. We tried to make sure that we shared your live session out there too, so hopefully others were able to show up. If you didn't, please make sure that you show up afterwards if you can and support our brother, even if you just briefly. At least you can start hearing what he's doing. He does some amazing things on the live session on YouTube, just about every day. Right before, sometimes an hour, sometimes 30 minutes before, something like that, 20 minutes before, but he comes on it and he's very obedient. All right. So in this, we have to recognize we are the standard. This is why even Isaiah says, and Paul will say later on, right, in Romans, but everybody be talking about Romans chapter 10, verse 9 and 10, but nobody wants to talk about verse 16, where Romans chapter 10, verse 16, Paul repeats Isaiah and says, who shall believe our report? Right? It's your culture. Just sound far out? Yeah, I am kind of far away. I'm trying my best to, I don't know, probably because of this. Does it sound better? If I need to hold it, I can try and hold it for a little bit like this. Or maybe I can get something to put it on top of. It's better? Okay. It's probably better now. I have it in a weird setup. If I put it too far where I have it, the wind is blowing and trying to blow it over, so I had to move it back some. But hopefully, maybe that'll be a little better for you all. I'm trying to make sure I speak as loudly as possible. Today, by the way, thank you everybody. It's YouTube. Okay. All right. So we want to make sure we get to this place where we comprehend that we are the standard, not just because we are Israel by blood, even though that's part of it. Not just because we black folk, even though, if you want to get technical, part of it, right? If you want to get, I know people don't like that. Person don't like that. But what I'm trying to tell you is the wind is blowing. Okay. The wind is a problem. All right. Well, one of the things that we have to make sure that we're doing and we're recognizing and we're realizing is that, praise God, one of the things we have to realize and recognize that we're dealing with is we have forgotten that we think we are poor. This is scripture. Scripture tells us that we believe we are poor, but really we are rich. And we forget that we are not those who we've been told that we are, but we are those who the Bible says that we are. The Bible declares that there are those that say they are us and are not, but are the synagogue of the Satan. This is where a lot of us miss who we are. Right? A lot of us miss who we are, where we are, what we're supposed to be. And I'm sorry, excuse me. So Brother Dwayne's Live is on Tuesdays from Tuesdays through Saturdays, and they're at 7 p.m. They start from about 7 p.m. to 7:15 p.m. somewhere in there, New York time. All right, 6:15 Central time. All right, amen. How you doing, P-Love? How you doing, Brother Kenyatta? That's right. Revelation chapter 2, verse 9 is what tells us that. How you doing, Sister Monica? You said, what is rich? Because I know I'm rich, period. So yeah, so once again, what is rich? You think you're poor, really you're rich. So if you think that you're poor because you don't make a certain amount of money and you don't realize that money's not real, then you'll start to think that there's something that makes you rich. Are you rich in the Most High? Are you rich in Yah? Are you rich in purpose? Are you rich in love? With Ron Audrey, right? Are you rich in countenance? Are you rich in children? Are you rich in community? Are you rich in language? Are you rich in your story, not his story? Are you rich in guidance? Are you rich in business? There's other ways you can be rich, right? Are you rich in time, where you've gotten yourself attached to a community and starting to build something to where you don't have to worry about your time being governed by somebody else, but you actually can be in control of your own time? How you doing? Is it Lay? I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Thanks for being part of the community. I think it's L-A-Y, right? See, so you think you're poor. Many persons walk around thinking they're poor, and many of us even think we're poor just because society has said that you're nothing. For the longest time, right, persons thought they were poor just because they were black. Others thought we were poor just because too. There's famous story, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. being in jail, right? And he's out there, just finished marching for his people and marching for rights and marching for jobs and all this. They get locked up, and he has two so-called white guards, right, that are watching him. And the white guards are thinking that they're doing something because they got Martin Luther King Jr. there. And he starts talking to them and starts talking back and forth. And he said, and he realizes their plight. He realizes that those white guards are worse off than the person that he's fighting for. He says, for real, y'all should be out there marching for us or marching with us. You got a problem, you got the same problem we had. But many persons are looking at things, and that's how the enemy gets you. The enemy has you looking at things that don't even matter, calling them riches, and you don't even realize certain riches don't even make it past your death. Right? It is responsible of me to make sure I leave something behind for those coming behind me. That being said, even though it's responsible for me to leave something behind for those who will follow, don't ever get it twisted. Even though I'm supposed to leave something behind for those that will follow me, there's certain things that there's certain things I'll never be able to take with me. And the only things I can take with me, the only things that will last are the things that are not attached to time. Right? But once again, a lot of persons don't look at having self-awareness, self-confidence, belief in the kingdom, belief in the community and environment, realizing that this is not just virtual, it's reality. Taking time out of our day to grow together, making sure that we take care of our children, giving them something to identify as, making sure that we actually learn that even whatever I have is not really for me, it's for another generation. So if I start thinking like that, I won't be as wasteful with a lot of different things that I'm blessed with. Like those are things that are way bigger and better than a lot of stuff that we think is righteous today. Grand Rising Prince, how you doing? How you doing, Louis Smith? You see, so Abraham says, he says to his servant, go find the wife for my son. Right? They don't do dating, right? We still shouldn't be doing dating. To each their own, I guess, on that. Not part of SOC. Maybe part of SOC, but definitely within house, we're not really playing that. Okay? We have to be structured in that. But some persons are going to do it no matter what, even though it's not righteous, even though it's not biblical. And hey, you're going to do what you got to do, right? I can only give so much guidance in dating because dating's not biblical. That being said, he sends his servant and he says, hey, find the wife for my husband, for my son. Now this is important too, because if a man, right, because Proverbs 18:21, he who finds a wife finds it to buy things and obtain the favor from a dom. Right? So I'm sorry, Proverbs 18:21. Death and life is in the power of the tongue, and those that love it will eat the fruit thereof. So therefore, when you're looking for a wife, look for a wife who does that, because Proverbs 18:22, if she does that, if she speaks life into the righteous places in your life and speaks death to the unrighteous places in your life, right? Then when you find a wife, you find a tabah thing, an acceptable and constitutional thing called marriage. And when you have that, you will obtain favor from the Most High. Right? That's how Proverbs 21 and 18:22 go together. And so Abraham comprehends this. He's lived with this. He's lived with a wife. Right? He comprehends what it is to have a wife even put you in your place sometimes. To have a wife sometimes be allowed, and I'm not trying to be allowed as far as, you can't move without man's permission. But I'm saying as far as men, we should recognize that there should be an allowance. Grand Rising once again, Shabbat Shalom once again, Sister Monica, how you doing? There should be an allowance, how you doing, Sister Snap, where men realize, hey, I can't do everything, and I've been blessed with somebody who multiplies me. I should allow this person to speak life, to speak death into certain things, to tell me sometimes like I've got to move different. I won't even say ultimatums, but just say outright she has a right to be able to lead the community as well. The two become one. Abraham has led with Sarah. Sarah has led with Abraham. Sarah has passed away, and now him being without a wife, not only is he seeing that his mortality is starting to fade, he also sees, wait a minute, not only is my mortality starting to fade, but I realized that my wife, what she meant to me, I realized what my wife meant to Isaac as his mother, and I realized the importance. Isaac's about to take over. If he's going to take over and rule well, I didn't get any of this stuff without my wife. Even when we tried to do things with Ishmael, Yah put a stop to that. And eventually my wife really put a stop to it too, right? And even though Ishmael is looked over by the Most High because he's my seed, right? My wife and I together, we are powerhouse. And I know that Isaac is going to need a wife. When you look at the Proverbs 31 woman, many of you, when you've gone through that, when you go to the women's conferences or different things you've been to, to and through and teachings and stuff, usually they only start at Proverbs 31:10. If you ever notice that, sisters, brothers maybe a little bit as well, but sisters, if you ever notice when you've gone through the teaching for the Proverbs 31 woman, usually what happens with the Proverbs 31 woman is namely this. Usually they start around verse 10, and they just basically start off saying, who can find such a woman? Who can find such a virtuous woman? But if you read Proverbs 31 verses 1 through 9 leading up to that, what you discover is that this is Solomon, who wrote Proverbs, is somebody who's actually listening to a story his father had told him, David. And David, the king, is telling Solomon a story. And what happens, this is how the story goes. There is a king who is supposed to become a ruler, right? The mother, so there's a Malachi, who's a male royalty, and a Malakache, which is female royalty. The Malakache has lost her Aish, has lost her husband. And so now you have the Malakache, who is the mother, and you have this Malachi, the male, who's about to take over the Ladach, the kingdom. And so the Malachi, the male royalty, is getting in position, and his mother is saying from mother to son, from royal mother to royal son, who's about to become Malachi, the ruler. She starts telling him, these are the things that you are going to do as Malachi, as king, if you will. You're going to do all these great things, but she starts saying, you've got to have a wife by your side, and your wife's got to be on point, and your wife has to recognize certain things about how a kingdom works, and your wife has to be somebody who's schooled in the word. How you doing, Granny? And your wife, she keeps saying all these different things, and then once she finishes telling them all the great things that a wife is supposed to be to a Malachi, to male royalty, she says, who can find such a virtuous or virtus woman? Now, virtus or virtue literally means how one represents in the Latin, right? So who can find a virtus? Who can find one who represents so well? In essence, is what she said. So she finishes telling him in Proverbs 31, 1 through 9, these are all the things you're going to need, but then she seems to be so perfect. And then she realizes, hey, this is difficult. Is it actually real? Is this woman actually realistic? Is it actually realistic that a man, right, or even a male ruler, a Malachi, can find such a Malachi, can find such a female ruler who has so much divine, spiritual, nurturing guidance in her life to help you to multiply? That's the question. That's what that question really is. That question is, hey, do you think that what I'm saying is real? Do you believe that you can find somebody? And then she basically, then at Proverbs 31:10 starts saying, well, if you don't believe she's somebody that can be found, this is where you find her, right? You'll find her in business. She has her own business. You'll find her in the way that she makes her husband look in the street. She has a name that's powerful, and therefore her husband's name will look even more powerful because his name is now attached to hers, but two become one. She's more precious than rubies. She's not even guided by money and stuff like that. There's no amount of money you can go ahead and get her to come outside of who she is. These are the things that are being said. She's able to make clothing and things like that. She starts saying, this is what you're looking for in a wife. And not just any wife, but even in royalty as a wife. You see? And nowadays, we don't even think about this stuff. We just go dating. Men nowadays, look at them hips. Right? Look at the breasts. Look at the bust size. Right? Is she willing to give it up on the first date? That's what a lot of cats are being raised in now. But if you're looking for a wife, a virtuous wife at that, a virtus, a wife who represents well, an ayazar, help me. Before she was called woman, before she was called any of this stuff, she was called what? She was called wife. I'm sorry, she was called help me. Before she was called wife, before you called her woman, before you called her Eve, right? Before you called her Amma or mother, she was called help me. Can you find the help me? The help me doesn't mean, by the way, just only that she's just here to help you. A help me is actually talking about that you are not able to function 100% without her. You hear what I'm saying, brothers? Are you even able to function 100% without her? That's what a wife does. See, I'm not saying that a man can't function. I'm not saying that you can't be righteousness. I'm saying that part of the reason that there's a thing called wife is because it was la'ataba adam bad. It was not righteous that Adam be alone. I will make for him a helpmate. It doesn't mean that one can't be by themselves. It doesn't mean that one can't be a widower. It doesn't mean that one can't go solo if you're called to do so, right? But Adam could, if Adam had existed forever by himself, he would have never been able to reach his potential. How you doing, Ricardo? Right, Ricardo. There, she's clothed with strength and dignity. She laughs without fear of the future. Yeah, I'm out. So there's a lot of different things that are there. There's a lot of different things that are there, right? So we see these things, right? There's a lot of different things that are there, and we see these things, and they're being listed by this wife, right? Just as we talked about yesterday, Titus chapter 2 tells the elder sisters or the elder wives to show the younger wives how to love their husbands. I know somebody taught you, some of y'all heard some weird teaching that husbands love their wives and wives aren't supposed to love, they're just supposed to submit. No. Husbands are supposed to submit to wives as well, and wives are supposed to love their husbands as well. They're supposed to be loved, right? As well too. So I say this because we've seen the importance of a wife yesterday when Abraham lost his. Now Abraham is getting ready to pass away, and Abraham says, you know what? Let's make sure that we establish Isaac, get him a wife. He won't be established. He won't become who he's supposed to be. He won't really be a son of mine. He won't be able to really, as the promise, execute correctly. Matter of fact, as the promise, he's supposed to be promised to have generations come through him that are supposed to be blessed by being my seed. How is it that my seed gets blessed and he doesn't have no wife? And so he says to his servant, Abraham says to the servant, go not anywhere, go to my people, my nation, the persons who share my character, my culture. Go over to them because they are raised the way that I was raised. How you doing, Gigi, by the way? And user 102-590-8085-363. Joy Boy and Sister Joy and everybody. Shabbat Shalom to everybody. He says, Abraham says to his servant in Genesis 24, go back to my people, my nation, and find the wife. Because the women over here, as great as they might be, they're not wives according to our standard. How you doing? Is it the legend? The legend Al one? I'm not sure if I'm saying that correct. Right? I'm gonna say that again. Just because you're a nice person doesn't mean that you're a spouse concerned within the context of the kingdom. How you doing, Sister Tia? Just because you're a nice woman does not mean that Yah labels you as a wife. In our culture, you're trained to be a wife from birth. See, in this culture, in the culture you're trying to take on, many of you haven't even realized that they don't even train you to be a male or female, and what that is. No wonder you don't think you need each other when you can just be whatever you want. Right? How you doing, Sister Monique? But in their culture, in our culture, we are training you to not just be male and female, but to be husband and wives from birth. Because in the kingdom, marriage is the beginning because all of us, even spiritually, are married to the Most High. If you don't even know what marriage is, if you can't be married to the Most High, if you can't be married to the Most High, how are you going to be spiritually endowed with anything? This is real. This is something we don't talk about a lot. How you doing, Mike Bass? Feel like a long time no talk to. Hopefully all's been well, right? But this is real in the field, right? Like, how do you become, right? Or like look at it like this. Many of you get in relationships and are mad, but how are you mad at what somebody's never been helped to become? I want you to be this, but nobody helped this person to become this. I want this sister to be this, but nobody helped this sister to become. So all she did was she figured out how to survive, and you're mad that she can't thrive, but nobody helped her to thrive. Nobody even protected her. All anybody cared about was just saying was using her like a hole in the dirt or a hole in the wall, right? Nobody taught that brother all the stuff that it is that you want him to be. You have all these brothers who have been denied the right to be men, but you're upset with them because they're not protectors and they're not providers. Well, if nobody helped him to become, if nobody taught him how to become, if nobody even cares to give him an outlet so that he can become, how are you mad at somebody for not being what no one helped them to become? Male or female. Nobody said, I'll lift you up. Nobody said, I'll be the standard of husband. Some of us grew up with mothers and fathers and still saw trash. Some of us grew up with mothers and fathers and still saw abuse. Some of us grew up with mothers and fathers and still saw how not to treat the person that you're with. Some of us grew up with mothers and fathers and saw mothers and fathers have relationships over and over again with others while trying to figure out, while saying, well, everything's cool because we're nice to each other when our children meet up. We still saw trash, some of us. Just being honest. And so you got to realize the standard. Remember we were talking about standard yesterday? Understand. Everybody wants to overstand or understand, and I get what you mean. But understand means you're under a standard. You know, a standard is a flag. But when the flag waves, that's a standard, right? And so when somebody goes to battle, you understand that as long as the standard is up, you keep fighting because you're fighting for the standard. The standard of the flag is telling you what the nation is, or what the leadership is, or what the rulership is, right? So a lot of cats, they're not out here talking about a standard or even giving you one. So what is there to fight for? Come on, the bloodstained banner everybody talks about. What is there to fight for when there's no standard? Where is the standard at? Where is the husband that's waving? Where is the wife that's waving? Where is the husband and wife that wave together? Where is that? Where is that standard? What are your children supposed to look at? It blesses me when these children come together physically, more and more nowadays, praise y'all, and even virtually. When these babies come together every weekend and they come and they learn stuff and they grow and they tell each other, man, I miss you. And you got 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds up to 16, 17-year-olds talking to each other on a regular basis and being a community and loving each other and coming together and realize that there's other persons out there that believe what I believe and live how I live and love how I love. I'm not an outcast because I love y'all. I'm not an outcast because I'm being trained on how to be a husband, how to be a wife. And therefore, I'm not an outcast if somebody tries to come and tries to date me and tries to give me some weird pickup line and I tell them no. I'm not a simp if I'm being trained on how to honor my wife and lead my mother and father and cleave to my wife. I'm not a simp. I'm a man. You hear what I'm saying? Like, there's a difference in there. If we're not thinking about this as society, now we're still trying to just survive. We're just trying to make it out. But you got to learn that it's time for us to come together as a nation and thrive. That's right, there is no training. But then we get mad at the untrained. At some point, we got to say, you're untrained, let's get you trained. That's why, once again, we talked about public and private at the beginning. The public is the beast. You've been taught, send your community to the same beast that's problematic and is anti-Christ. But it's time to start making sure we keep the word and keep our children meaning to God. How you doing, Frog Boy? So back to Genesis 24. I don't want to go past time. We got to make sure that we get ready for the podcast. Praise Him. So back to Genesis 24. It is Barashayat series. Abraham says, go to my countrymen and find a wife. And there's just some observations I'm going to give from the text, if I may. There's a few observations. Praise y'all. Hopefully these things will help you out and you'll look at some things a little differently. But just some observations I see in the text, if that be all right with you. If you can just stick around 30, 40 more minutes. Just a few observations I see. Because Abraham sends his servant to find a wife. And he who finds a wife finds a righteous thing called marriage, institution, that's protected by law, that allows those who are institutionalized to function differently than those who are not in the institution. Remember, in order for you to be in the institution, if you're going to be in the institution, we can see signs you've been in the institution because something starts clicking and changing in you, right? Something will change in you when you've been institutionalized. We can tell what type of school you've been to because you've been institutionalized. We can tell if you've been to prison before because you've been institutionalized. We can tell if you're for the streets or from the streets or in the streets because you've been institutionalized. We can tell you've been institutionalized. We can tell if you're church hop. Why? Because you've been. All right, so we're talking about the institution of marriage. Are you institutionalized according to the kingdom? Let's find out. Just some observations I see in the text. These are just some observations. So Abraham sent his servant, and his servant leaves with a raft of camels. Basically, he leaves like he's the servant of a king. He leaves with all types of animals and everything, but he's got all his camels, he's got all his beasts, he's got all his opulence with him, right? He's trying to cover it up, but at the same time, you know, when you're royalty, sometimes you can't cover up royalty. It just is what it is, right? He got to be safe out there, but at the same time, he's walking around with all this stuff, and plus he has to impress the wife. See, watch this, because in our culture, if you didn't know this, it's actually important that we be able to give a dowry, right? A husband, all right, who's pre-qualified. So he who finds a wife, you can only find for a wife, or you're only allowed in our culture to look for a wife when you are qualified as a husband. So in our culture, you must be pre-qualified as a husband and pre-qualified as a wife. Once again, as I said in the beginning, a lot of persons are sitting there thinking, once I find the one, then I'll become a husband or I'll become a wife. You haven't been trained well, right? He who finds a wife, that means she must already be qualified. And if you're going to find her, you should know what a wife is, and you must know what a husband is. Because if you are not a husband, then what is it that you can offer her and show her and give her vision-wise and show her family even that says that she should go ahead and leave her family, and so that you can leave your mother and father and cleave to her? He who finds a wife. He who finds a wife. That means he must be husband before he can find. That means she should be wife before she gets found. And if we ever got that in our mind, that you should already be what you want to become. This is eternal speaking now. We don't come out of common sense. We're coming in the kingdom sense only. I'm going to treat you like you're in the kingdom. I'm going to treat you like you're royalty, okay? I'm not going to treat you like you're some peon out here. I want you to be treated as royalty. I want you to hear me as royalty. Get your heart game up. Open your heart to this, right? Let those who have an ear hear what's about to say. We're about to speak royal speech, okay? All right? I'm not talking down to you. I'm speaking up because that's where you belong, all right? You ready? You ready? You must be what you want to become. If you want to be a strong husband or become a strong husband, then you must be a strong husband. How you doing, Sister Sheila? How you doing, Trey? Somebody said, I don't necessarily get, I guess I get what you're saying, but what you talking about? Here, look. Before I found a wife, I started training. It was my heart's desire to have a wife. Before I found Elder Amo, and really even we found each other, the way it worked out. But before I was blessed with Elder Amo, I had made up in my mind that I would be Yahweh's wife in the spirit, because Israel belongs to Yah. Right? We are married unto him, according to Jeremiah chapter 3. So I said I would find out what it was to be his wife exclusively, meaning that I would learn what it was to become what it is that I was after. And by being the wife of the Most High, I saw how he treated me, how he loved me, how he taught me, how he honored me, how he protected me. And that caused me to say, okay, so when I find the wife, I must do the same with her that's done to me. So I had to become what I wanted to be in my life. You said, are we providing now? No, you're making room now, right? So this is cultural. I'm gonna try and do this real quick. We have other videos on this. We even do marital sessions and stuff together. My wife is on with me and stuff like that for. But I'm gonna just do this real quick because once again, this is cultural. And you might just be coming up to this for the first time, so you might not get all the in-depth stuff, or you might not I'm not saying that you can't go deep, I'm just saying cultural, the lens, the viewpoint you might have might be a little different, right? So this is how it's supposed to work. You ready? This is how it's supposed to work, right? And we're supposed to be 100% locked in on this. This is problems that we want to do whatever we want and then think we're supposed to get the blessing. This is how it actually works. See, when the Bible, we don't talk about the nation part of it, the work part of it, all this stuff. Let's do it like this. There's 7 sets of threes, culturally speaking. 7 sets of threes. Thank you for the love. This is how they work. Really, the first one is even before. There's more than threes, but we'll just call it 7 sets of threes. Age 0 to 3, or even before the baby's born, while they're in the womb, they're already learning, and they're already getting stuff generational curses, generational blessings and stuff, right? But ages 0 through 3, you train a child that they're either a male or a female, or a boy or a girl. That's it. I know everybody's like, no, you got to get them ready for preschool and get them blah, blah. Yeah, okay. We need them to understand you're a boy, you're a girl. Something that's not taught. Basic, right? I'm going to just leave it at the basics. Age 0 through 3, you're a boy, you're a girl. Ages 4 through 6, you begin to teach them to be weaned from mom. Now, weaned from mom, not just only from the breast, but ages 4 through 6, you don't want to have mama's boys, right? Because the son's going to go and do some stuff with daddy soon. And the girl, she needs to be under mama, but shouldn't necessarily be so attached to mama that she's not learning how to have some kind of independence. She don't got to wait till be a teenager to do that, right? Ages 7 through 9, you then begin to teach. You then begin to have them become the apprentice. The boy becomes the apprentice of his father. The girl becomes the apprentice of her mother. This is why Yehoshua is a carpenter. Why is he a carpenter? Because his father's a carpenter. That's why Solomon is Malachi. Why? Because David was Malachi. Right? That's why if you're in Judah, you praise. Why? Because your parents, they praised. You're an apprentice. Right? You learn what it is. You're already in school. But a lot of persons are thinking teaching school, but remember they used to have something called home economics? They pretty much gotten rid of it around the country, seems like, but they used to have had home ec, and maybe you got it for a semester in junior high, maybe a couple semesters in junior high and high school, something like that. But home ec was something that you learned every day. Home ec was something that you were supposed to do every day. And mama showed you every day and daddy showed you every day what they did around the house. And if dad went to work, you went to work. If dad was in the field, you were in the field. If dad was making was doing things as far as carpentry, you were doing things as far as carpentry. If mama was playing music or dancing to music, you were dancing to music. That whatever your parents did, you did, because that's who's supposed to teach. We're not supposed to send our children to the beast. We're supposed to take care of our children at home. Like we talked about last night, judgment starts at home. You're supposed to make sure that they get the word first here. That they comprehend what male and female is through your person, through your nation, through your culture. That's right, we outsource teaching to the government, right? Now we mad that it looks like we outsourced it. They outside the source. Abba, Father, means source. We outsource. We said, don't learn what Abba wants you to learn. Don't learn what Abba Yehovah wants you to learn. Learn what the school system said. The school system part of the beast. They're anti-Christ. And then we mad and upset when they're telling your child anti-Christ rhetoric. Right? But that's ages 7 through 9, they become an apprentice. Ages 10 through 12, then we start getting into the extreme, what you would call the education or the school type education, stuff like that, and the extreme level. Then ages 13 through 15, we teach them what it is to be a man or a woman. That's why at age 16 they have a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah or a bata mitzvah or a bata mitzvah, right? And that literally means legally when they become a man, or legally when they become a woman. Once that happens, though, the training hasn't stopped. At ages 16 through 18, we train them on what it is to be a husband and a wife. And then ages 19 through 21, we teach them train them on what it is to be a mother or a father. Really both, because you have to know both sides of it. Then once they hit age 22, the husband has been trained, the father has been trained, the man has been trained, even though he might not have children, might not have a physical wife, but he has been trained. We give him his inheritance then. And we say, go make us proud of what we treat you to do. Right? And for the wife, right? For the wife who's been trained up, she is protected in her father's house. So she stays at home and she's still protected because she goes from father to father. Later on when she gets married, she goes from her physical father to her spiritual father, who is her physical husband. Does that make sense? Right? So so this is the training. So when right, and then later on, this is that scripture. You think of it as a funeral scripture, but that scripture, John 14, beloved, let not your heart be troubled. If you believe in the Father, also believe in me. In my Father's house there are many mansions. If it was not so, I would not have told you. I go to prepare a place for thee, that where I am, you will be with me also. A lot of persons miss this. Is that the husband, right, when he finds a wife, there's supposed to be something called a knocking ceremony, and they show up at the house, right? So after the husband sees a wife in his work, so every husband's supposed to have a work already. Every husband's supposed to already have a work. And so while he's in his work and he has his inheritance, he has his land, he has all this stuff going on, he's doing what he's supposed to do. And in the midst of his work, he comes across a wife. And when he finds a wife, he might be led to be with her. And so when he goes to that wife, he basically gives like an impromptu, he should have one already together because he lives it all the time, but it kind of gives an impromptu, what you might call a resume. And he gives a resume to her. He says, hey, look, I've been watching you. I see that you're a wife. Thanks for being part of the community. Is it Jadada? I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Jadada, right? But he says, I've been watching you. I see you, this and that. I see you doing great things. Look, this is where I'm headed. This is the vision I have. This is what y'all's doing. This is how I think that my vision can be able to protect your vision. I think that we'd be great to be together as one. And he presents this. The wife now has an opportunity to say, okay, I see that, or I don't see that. Let's say she agrees. And she says, okay, I agree. Let's go ahead and make this happen. Now what happens is their parents have to come together. The parents come together. It's called a knocking ceremony. So the bridegroom, or hopefully the bridegroom to be, will come knock on the bride's door, or will have their father with them, or a father figure who will knock on the door. The father figure, right, hopefully has the door open to him, and if so, he's invited inside. The father, the mother, the son come in. The daughter, her mother, her father are there, and the father, if he pours a drink out, right, it could be tea, it could even be alcohol, whatever, but usually tea. But he pours out something for the father of the bridegroom rather, right? Then that means, okay, we can start having discussion on how this is going to work. Everybody works things out, even including the dowry, which is, hey, I will give your family something to show you that I can take care of your daughter, and also your daughter has value, right? So they talk that through. Then they start talking about, okay, well, this is what she's going to need. This is her personality. This is what she's protected. This is how much we like to be able to visit, blah, blah. Like, we're all going to be a family. What are we going to do together? Like, we start talking business and kingdom, right, and nation building. Once all that's discussed, then what happens is this. The husband, right, now that everybody's agreed, the husband goes back to his father's land. He doesn't go back to his land. He goes back to his father's land. He might go there from time to time, but he's got work to do in his father's land. He goes to his father's land and he builds an add-on to his father's house. That add-on is called a mansion. So he goes back to his father's land and builds on his father's house. The word house in Hebrew also doubles for the word family. So he goes to his father's family and builds an attachment to the father's family, or a mansion to his father's house, right? And when he builds that, the father is the one who tells him when he's complete, because he is just a son. He has not been married yet. He doesn't know the ins and outs, what's necessary, what needs to be built. And there's also stuff that the father is still in communication with the other father, and the mother is in communication with the other mother, still talking about what the daughter would need and what the grandchildren would need and all this. So the father allows his son to start building on, adding on to his house. But he's the one who knows the qualifications and the specifications. Therefore, the son is there every day to build onto his father's house, and the attachment for him and his wife to move into for the beginning of their relationship, so that when they get together, they can be safe and have protection as they begin to have children and do things together and learn and grow together, right? Right? So no man knows the day nor the hour except the Father. That's where that comes from. It's a cultural, contextual thing. No man knows the day nor the hour except the Father. The Son, he's been trained to be a father, but he ain't been one yet, so he's going to be under his father's tutelage still. And once he finishes building it, his father will then come out and say, all right, son, you're finished. All right, son, thank you for building the garden. All right, son, thank you for making sure that she likes to cook. So make sure she got the extra kitchen and all that stuff, and the cookware and all that. Hey, son, You know what? She likes to have clothing, so you got her the closet together. Hey, son, she likes to be able to, she wants to make sure that she has a lot of our grandbabies. So starting off, who knows how many you guys will have before you move to your own land. Hey, make sure that you got a lot of room. He builds all these different things as an add-on to his father's house. And whenever he comes back to visit, they just go into the add-on that he built. How you doing, Jose? Now that's the husband's side. The wife is in her father's house and is doing what? Putting oil in her lamp. What does that mean? She used to, not just figuratively, she used to literally have to have oil in her lamp. That's Matthew 25, by the way, if you need the scripture reference. She had to have oil in her lamp. So it talks about there were 10 virgins, 5 were wise, 5 were foolish. 5 virgins had oil in their lamp, 5 did not. Right? You were supposed to keep oil in your lamp so when your husband came back, you would have your light on. It was supposed to be a figurative thing, but also a physical thing to show everybody that you've been making yourself sure that you've been preparing yourself for your husband. He's been preparing a place for you and learning about you by preparing a place. You've been preparing yourself for him by making sure that every day you light the lamp, you're praying for him, you're thinking about what it is that you need, you're coming outside of yourself. Both of you are doing things outside of yourself to come together as one, waiting for the father of the bridegroom to say, go get my daughter and bring her in here. So when we're talking about the stuff with the wife, we're talking about it in a different context than many persons are used to, because a lot of persons don't even know that, let alone know to live by that, let alone even think about that as being a standard. A lot of us around here just being like, how much money he made? Hey, how he look in that suit when he approached? Yo, what were them hips looking like when she was swaying away? And I'm not mad at that, right? Those are things that are of value, right? But I'm just saying, we haven't been trained since birth to be husband and wife. I know it's certainly we have not. You can claim whatever you want, but we can look at the world, we can look at the church, we can look in the so-called Hebrew Israelite community and see that. You said you took one semester, made 3, or made a pillow and cooked beignets. Yeah, we did. What we do? French toast, I think, and made pillows. I think I made a football pillow. We had to take an egg home, make sure that we didn't crack it, stuff like that. I think we did that. I can't recall. I might be thinking about the show I watched. But you guys dig what I'm saying, right? You see what I'm saying? So we're looking at it from the wrong context. So with that context, with that thought process in mind, completely different than the world, completely different than Canaanite context. He says, Abraham says, hey, go find a wife. And this man goes, and he goes to a well. This servant goes to a well. He's sent on assignment to find the wife. That's how important finding a wife is he's sent on assignment outside of where he lives, all the way somewhere else with instructions. And you know what? He's afraid. He's kind of afraid to make the wrong decision. And thank you for the love, right? He's kind of afraid to make the wrong decision. If when you read Genesis 24, he gets there and he's like, ooh. He starts praying to Yah. He says Elohim, right? Elohim Shaddai, because that's what they would have called him back then. They didn't start calling him Yehovah until Moses asked him what his name was, right? But they would have said Elohim Shaddai, right? Y'all know that it's like they say Jehovah Shaddai. That's not what they would have said. He would have said Elohim Shaddai, right? Maybe even Elohim Ya'adach, right? My provider. He would have said, hey, I'm out here, and I'm at this well. And well has water in it. Water is spirit. Water also can represent people. Water is something that you get in the cool of the day. Water is a place where wives went, by the way. He was a wise man. He knew where to go. Can I just put a pin in that real quick, brothers, sisters? Do you know where to go for a husband? Do you know where to go for a wife? That's why you're supposed to come to the community. You're supposed to build a community so that you ain't. See, a lot of you don't even know where to go. You know, some persons go to church just to pick up men and pick up women. So some of y'all think you go to church, but somebody's there knowing that if they say enough bless the Lord and they sing something enough that they know the draws come off. I'm sorry if that's crude. I got to tell you the truth. See, you don't even know where to go. There's no community. There's no culture. Somebody goes to the club. And I ain't saying you can't ever find any love at the club, but I'm just saying the club is not the place that you go. But a lot of persons go to the club so that you can take a little ting home with you, and do what you do. right? But that's that's not where we should go. You should come on. A husband finds a wife while he's in his work. So much so, we talked about this in this series already. We've been doing the series since February 7th, so there's a lot. You can always go on YouTube and catch up if you missed some of this. Even if you missed all of it, take time. I invite you to take time to catch up. But watch this. If you go back and you listen, remember, Adam was in his work. Adam was given work before he was given the wife. Y'all don't want to go there. Adam was given a work before he was given a wife. Adam, keep the garden, dress it. Adam, name the animals. And in naming the animals, he saw the necessity of a wife because all the animals had to help him, except him. He wasn't an animal, by the way, but you get what I'm saying, right? In doing what he was called to do and working where he was called to work, he realized the value of having to help me. As soon as and Yahweh prophetically said, before he gave it to Adam, he said, man, right? It's not righteous that Adam would be alone. I will make for him a helpmeet, an Iazar. And then, right? But then Adam had to work and come into agreement with what Yah declared that he would make for him. Once Adam worked and came into agreement with it, then Adam was put to sleep and he rested in Yah as Yah took what was in him and multiplied it. And therefore, when Adam awoke and saw a wife, he then, or saw Iazar, the helpmeet, he actually named, he was the one who named her helpmeet, named his helpmeet Iazar, named her Aish, wife, and named himself, instead of Adam, which means man, he did rename or gave himself another position called Aish, husband. And for that cause, well, every man, every Adam, anybody who comes out of Adam for that cause, right, of two becoming one, of getting back to what you can, what completes you, and what also nurtures you, and what also multiplies you, right? For that cause, well, any Adam, the word man there is Adam. Any Adam kind, any mankind, for that cause, any man must leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife. That's how important this is. How you doing, Brother Ali? How you doing, Simone? Oh, yeah, man, we're going to preach it. Right? So before she was called Eve, which by the way was actually originally more so like Amma, which is mother, right? So before she was called Amma, mother, Eve, before she was called wife, Aisha, she was called helpmeet, Iazar. So the first thing that a man should be looking for in a wife is one who helps meet the need, but also help meet. If you look at it, even in the modern Hebrew, you'll discover that it's the same thing. That what they're trying to tell you is that she's from your side. She's Levi. If you don't know the word Levi, Levites, Levitical, it means one who's by your side, attached to you at the hip. So Simeon and Levi basically were ones who were attached at the hip and heard one another well. If you study Simeon and Levi and their relationship, that's what their names mean. So Levi means that she's attached. So when somebody comes from your side, they come from your Levi, that's priestly. That's alhamdulillah. That's another level. Well, when it's saying in the cultural context, when you leave your mother and father and cleave to your wife, the word cleave is even a herb, if you don't know. There's a herb called cleave, if you don't know. And if you look at this herb, the herb clings. It cleaves to you. So if you try to take it off, it'll cleave to your finger. If you get it off your finger, it'll get back on your clothes. If you fall into a whole thing of cleave, you're going to be there for a minute trying to get the stuff off. Because it cleaves, it's clingy. Even when it dies, even when it's disconnected, even when it gets brown, it loses the green, right? It still cleaves. So what it's saying is that you're going to have to cleave to your mother, to cleave to your wife more than you spend time with your mother and father. For this cause, anybody who's of Adam will leave mother and father. Look, Abraham, leave even after Sarah was dead. Yahweh said, before I give you the blessing for you and Sarah and the promise coming, he says you got to leave your father's territory and go over to Mamre. Leave where you are and go over to Canaan. And I'll give you wherever you go. See, this is how kingdoms work as well anyway, right? Kingdoms work by what? By expansion. You're not going to expect. You're not going to be of a kingdom mindset and everybody just stays in the same place. At some point, you got to go and do your own thing and set up things. Whatever. We're a nation, but a nation that continues to expand. That's what kingdoms do. And even though we don't like certain colonizers, don't forget that you are in a kingdom. If you're in a kingdom, then you colonize. We just do it different. We colonize through love. We colonize through work ethic. We colonize through faith. We colonize through prayer. We colonize by the way that we live. We colonize by what we establish in our communities. We colonize by the way we love our husbands and the way we love our wives. But we colonize nonetheless. It's just like gentrification. Everybody afraid. Look, somebody should gentrify. Wherever you live should look like you. The problem is not that others gentrify. The problem is that you'll let somebody come into your community and gentrify, or you won't gentrify your own. You want your community to look like theirs because you think that somebody else's gentrification is more valid than yours. But Yah says you are in a kingdom. Wherever you go, it should look like him. You should go to certain areas and be like, oh, they're wearing fringes over here. This is a different area. Oh, their hair looks different over here. This is a different area. Oh, you know, they have Hebrew characters up on the wall instead of alphabet letters. Excuse me, this is a different area. Oh, they treat their wives differently. This is a different area. We should be galvanized through colonization, kingdom-wise, and we should be all right with gentrification. Because where you are should look like, sound like, smell like, act like you. That's why we should act like Yah, because we come from Yah. So if we come from Yah and we be Yah's children, why would we not look like Yah? Why would we not sound like Yah? Why would we use certain words when Yah says not to use them? Why would we curse persons and use curse words? Why would we say stuff like, I'm the shh? That's a curse. Why would you curse yourself? Don't touch my shh. I don't have no shh. I don't have no dumb. I don't live in that. I don't live dirty. Why would I curse myself? Why would I speak about myself like that? I'm married to a wife. I don't need the baddest bee. Why are you the baddest bee? Who told you that being a bee and having a leash on or having to listen to a master? You're so busy talking about, I'm the baddest bee. I don't need to talk to nobody. Bees have masters. Bees get put to sleep when they get out of pocket. Bees are supposed to be obedient to somebody as property. We don't want a bee, we want a wife. So, Abraham has sent a servant, Genesis 24. Abraham has sent a servant, Genesis 24. And he said, hey, I need you to find a wife of our culture, of our community, of our ways, of our truth. How you doing, mindful moments? That's what he says, right? That's what he makes it a point to say. And they go over and they do this. Right? They go over, he says they need to find a wife for Sarah Center. And they go over and they have this conversation. They have this, I'm sorry. So this is how it works. We're at the time, we're almost at time, so I'm trying to make sure we come to a conclusion, right? These last several minutes. So he goes to a well, a place, that's where we're at. Praise God. Tadad HaKadosh. How you doing, Shabbos? He goes to a well. And he goes to a well, why? Because that's where wives show up. Whether they're physically married to husbands or not, that's where wives show up. At the well. They show up there for water. They show up there for nurture. They show up there for protection. So they show up in groups. They show up at a certain time. The sun goes down. If you notice, I don't even tell you the time that was there. The sun starts to go down because it's cooler in the day. So they show up as groups. The women come out together for protection at a certain time. Right? When it gets darker, it's easy for somebody who's trying to do something to the women to do something to them or to hurt them or to steal from them. So they come out together and they don't want to come out in the heat. When it's noontime, noonday is where you're out in the desert. So he knows the culture enough to know when and where the wives are. And he prays to Yah. He says, look, he prays to Elohim. He says, please send me a wife for Isaac. And he says, this is what I'm looking for. He said, I'm looking for her to be a wife on another level. Now, sisters, if you don't get upset at this part, it is what it is. I'm just telling you the word. I'm telling you culture. This doesn't mean you're a doormat. As you'll see with Rebecca and Isaac, as we keep going through this, you'll see that Rebecca is most definitely not a doormat. Rebecca can even be a little troublesome sometimes, and Isaac will still roll with her because that's his wife. Just like Sarah was able to put some stuff in there, and Abraham had to follow suit as well. How you doing, Rock Lot? How you doing, D? So, but you know what I'm saying? This is what he looks for. And by the way, this is something that men look for, whether you like it or not. I'm giving you the game, right? You sitting up there talking about dating and listening to all these other person. I'm just telling you what the word says. The word has already set this example for you. You ready? She shows up, and this is what he asked for to show up. He says, he prays to Elohim. He says, hey, I would love not only for this to be a wife, for this to be of the right family that Abraham said as well. So, of the right family, already be a wife. He says, what I'm looking for is when she comes, might she see that I'm there and ask if I need some water? So will she be ready to serve me? A wife is somebody who serves. A husband is as well. But I hope you get the context. But he doesn't just say there, he says, not only will she serve me, I pray that she would then ask if my camels need water as well. Why is that important? Why is that crucial? How you doing, Sister Melissa? Why is that important? He says, because once again, she's a multiplier, right? She's a nurturer, and she's going to take whatever I have and she's going to make it prosper, right? That's that old, right? She'd make $1 out of 15 cents. I can't tell you how many times I've given 15 cents because it's all that I had. I've given a loaf of bread and a couple different types of spread, and that's all that I had. I've given $40 worth of groceries, and we had to figure out how to make it last for 2 weeks. And somehow, some way, my wife can take that, take what I have, and not only use it, but feed into it and make you feel like it's 85 cents better than what it was. It's 85% better. I don't know if that's how you would say it, but you get what I'm saying. It fulfills. How about this? It fulfills the other 85%. Right? Like, husbands look for that. I'm not saying that that's your only value, but hear what I'm saying. Brothers understand that without you, a real brother, a real husband, a real kingdom husband, how you doing, Elder Selectarian? He comprehends and understands that without you behind him, without you by his side, what is he true? He understands this. I understand that no matter what anybody has to say about me, if Elder Alma ain't there, then ain't much happening. And that's why you should be praying for Elder Alma. You should be praying for your friend's wife. You should be praying for the wives in general, because if it's not for you, we know that we don't move. If it's not for you, if it's not for my wife, I'm not here speaking today. She's the one that when I was upset and frustrated because nobody would give me an opportunity to preach, while I was out there getting frustrated about preaching to the trees and the ants and everything else because I had a word in me, but nobody would listen. She said, well, then learn how to use YouTube. I was like, I don't know how to use YouTube. She said, well, whatever, learn. I know you got a word in you. If a person shows up and you get the opportunities to, you do very well. Why wouldn't somebody want to listen to you? If it's not for my wife, I'm not here. That's the way that works. That's the way that works, right? So he says, yeah, I'm looking for a wife. Don't have it to where she'll just try to impress me, but I want to see how she'll deal with the things that I have. Yes, service. Then once again, that doesn't mean you're a doormat. Once again, I'm not saying you got to walk around and you got to have your whole, people will go weird places with this. You got to have your face covered and your eyes slit there, and that's all you can do. I didn't say any of that, right? I said, you're looking for somebody who will serve you and who, watch this. My wife, when she met me, when we had our initial conversation, she said, I see greatness in you, or I saw greatness in you. She said, that's why I pulled up. She said, I saw greatness in you. Right? I'm one hop, skip, and a jump away from the street. As far as I'm just coming out of being homeless, I'm literally met her in transitional housing. I'm coming out of stuff. And to be honest with you, I probably should have been better off before I started pursuing marriage, right? To be honest with you, I probably was disobedient. Not probably, I was disobedient to the word, but I didn't know better. If I knew better, who knows, right? So praise y'all for him working things out. All things work together for Tabah, for those who love him and are called according to his purpose, who happen to be the saints, right? That being said, well, she spoke life into me, and even when she challenges me, she's still like, okay, if you don't want to do that, but I'm telling you, like maybe you just don't want to be blessed. She'll say something like that, and she's right, and that irks me. She doesn't have to yell it. She can just say it and walk away and keep serving me. That's when it gets really irritating, but it's righteous. Now, can I be honest? It's right. It's irritating, but it's righteous because she'll say it and then keep moving like she ain't say nothing. Brothers, you know what I'm talking about, and you know she right, and you don't like the fact. And look, sometimes she can say it wrong, but I'm just being honest. Most of the time, our wives, they say it exactly the way they're supposed to say it, and they keep serving you, and they don't miss a beat, and you're upset because you know they're righteous. You know what I'm saying? Sisters, y'all be mad too. You guys get mad with your man when he doesn't yell at you, when he just says what he says, and he keeps it moving. Y'all know how that works. Right? But he says, will Rebecca serve me, and will she serve what I have? Will she bless me and bless what I have? I don't remember if this was yesterday, a couple days ago. I was talking to Elder Arma, I was talking to my wife, and I made a point to tell her that when I first got with her, whatever, the thing that like attracted me more than anything else, and my wife, as far as I'm concerned, is 100 out of 1. She's a 75 out of 10, right? As far as her looks and all that stuff. But hear what I'm saying. I told her that one of the things that really got to me is that I had this, well, the Holy Spirit, but at the time you say you had this feeling, whatever, but I had this instinctive place that I was at that was like, she's going to make me more valuable. And I didn't mean she was going to make me more valuable as far as she's just going to make me great. She's going to make me more valuable because because this is how I look at my wife. My wife is the greatest woman to ever walk the face of the planet. I know the Bible would say different, right? So I have to be very careful with that. So I'll say, if it wasn't for the word, I would have to say she's the greatest woman to ever exist. You can't tell me nothing different, and I have to pray about it because sometimes I'm that close to saying something that's against the word. Because I know it says Mary is the greatest born amongst all women, right? I know Eve is supposed to be right behind her, right? I'm just saying, as far as I'm concerned, Alma is all that and a bag of chicken wings, right? That being said, though, and the love that I have and the level that I look at her at, I try to become better every day because she makes me better. So when she makes me better for her, she makes me better. This is why you find a wife, not just a woman, not just a plaything, not a girlfriend. You find a wife. It is my wife that makes me better. It is my wife that makes me greater, right? But my wife is making me greater because she wants to support me. You see how that works? So my wife wants me to be at my best, right? And so she will not accept anything less than me being on the throne. So if she wants me to be on the throne, then I try my best to be for her because she's sitting on the throne next to me. So as I'm doing my best to become greater for my wife is always trying to get me to become greater for myself. And by becoming greater for myself, I become greater for my wife. You catch it? It's cyclical. It's a symbiotic relationship. It's a different way of thought. And so Rebecca comes and she serves not only the servant, she serves the animals. And from that point on, the servant then realizes that that's the one. He praises Elohim. He goes and talks to her parents. He brings her back home. And the rest, as they say, is history. So it's very important that we keep that in mind. All right. That being said, it's time for us to get ready for the podcast. We'll see you at the top of the hour. If you are somebody who's joining us on TikTok, we'll put that in front of you for a little bit so you'll be able to see where you need to go, what app you need to get. You need to have the Podbean app to be able to join us. We'll be on at the top of the hour, 10 a.m. New York time, so prayerfully you'll be able to join us there. We are thankful and grateful to have each and every one of you, very appreciative Thank you guys for hanging in there, listening with us, and growing with us in this year where this is for us, hashtag a safe place. And I'm thankful to each and every one of you. Elder Select Tamara and Elder Select Nice, I haven't forgotten you. I got to reach out to both of you for different reasons coming up for June 1st. But we're trying to get all that stuff together and start planning some stuff out and get some stuff together. I appreciate you all. I hope you guys got something out of today. We, for the rest of the day, we have the podcast coming up, top of the hour, 11 a.m. New York time is going to be Shabbat School for the babies. 7 p.m. London time will be discussion for those that are in England and those who are close to England. 7 p.m. New York time will be the men's meeting. We are like an hour outside of Dallas, so I'm going to have to at least finish Shabbat on the podcast. And then maybe we'll be able to get on the road as the children are doing their thing, or maybe we'll wait till the children finish. Our goal is to try and get into Dallas at some point today and find a place where we can park the RV and just kind of kick it somewhere. So if you are able to, we'll probably be here for the rest of the day, maybe even until tomorrow. So if you are in Dallas, Houston, Fort Worth, and are able to come over, we were trying to reach some persons up that were further up north, but you guys are having some stuff praying for you and your family situation. Hopefully all is well. If we can, for those who can't make it out for different reasons, as far as not having a vehicle and stuff like that, we will try our best to see what we can do. We'd love to see you, though, as many of you as possible. Once we get to where we're going, wherever it'll be, might even be just a parking lot somewhere, but wherever we'll be, we'll try to make sure that we stay in the area. Those of you who want to come by and say, hey, sorry, we couldn't really set up an official thing. We're running behind. We're supposed to already be with you guys, I think, like last weekend or a few days into the beginning of the week. So hopefully it works out with it being Saturday. Like I said, maybe we'll be here tomorrow. Possibly. Maybe we'll still be here tomorrow. And if you want to come and see us, if we are tomorrow, you can try to come by the address that we give out and maybe just come through during the live or something like that, because after the live session, I'd imagine we got to get on the road and try to finish the rest of the way over to Georgia before we start making our way back up north so that we can say hi to everybody for Memorial Day weekend. But love you all to life. You all take care. I will talk to you guys very soon. Continue to support one another. Continue to pray for one another. Thank you to the ministerial staff. Continue to pray for our MITs. Continue to pray for the families. Thank you for those who reach out, contact, connect with. And yeah, we love you. So thank you again. Keep each other in prayer. Praying for Sister Renee and your family as well. We're thankful. We have a great testimony. Well, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to share, but those who've been praying for Minister Moselle, we've made some headways and things like that, or Yah has, and so we're excited about that as well. Praying for Auntie Marion and family who are on the road as well. So many other things that we're praying for. Just keep each other lifted up, and we love y'all. We can't wait to see you. We can't wait to talk to you. And Brother Ali, if you're still on, I'm going to try to make sure I reach out to you sometime today. Sister Jenna, if you catch this, I'm going to try to reach out sometime today. I know there's a lot of persons we got to reach out to, but hopefully all is well. Sister Iska, I know you said things are getting better, so I kind of took my foot off the gas as far as trying to reach out, but I'll try to reach out as well, just double check on everything as well, and continue to keep each other lifted up in prayer. All right, so love you all to life. We'll see you on the podcast right at the top of the hour. And as always, we give our honor and praise to the Most High. We give our praise and honor to him for my wife, the Honorable Amma, who lives a life that's able to be honored. As always, you can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. We are coming to North Carolina. I don't know about how long or when. It's going to be a random thing, but we can try to start sending out texts to everybody once we get to Georgia and just tell everybody, hey, we're on the road, give everybody a city thing, and hopefully, same kind of thing. We don't have time really for an official meetup. We're running behind, but we could basically just kind of be like, hey, we're at this address. If y'all can make it, try to see if we can get a central address somewhere. So I don't know how that'll work, but we'll try our best to make it so. But anyway, love you all to life. You all take care. Continue to do great things and righteous things. Those that are coming together to Philadelphia for June 1st for Pentecost. We're going to have more information coming for you guys soon, as well as those who are meeting up May 22nd through the 25th for Memorial Day meetup in D.C. We're excited and grateful about everything that God's doing, and we're hopefully going to see all of you very soon. How you doing, Sister Shirley? So love you all to life. You all take care, and remember that you are loved. You are necessary. You are majestic. You are fearfully, wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shabbat Shalom. Take care. And just in case I don't see you this evening, since it's really Shabbat Shalom again this evening, Shabbat Shalom twice over. Peace. Shalom.